Woohoo! Hey, good morning. It's Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. So great to be here with you this morning, 6:05 on a Friday, 6:05 a.m. You can always subscribe to my YouTube channel. I'm live there. You can find me at Conservative Cat Show. Just type it in your search bar. We've got so much to get to today. First, I want to talk about a local story here in Decatur, Illinois. A monitoring well has leaked. I guess it leaked in March, and now there is talk of this leak that happened in Decatur. It's a carbon pipeline. There's talk of it now because the opponents are out there saying, hey, the injection process itself isn't safe. We're having these monitor wells leak, and it's not safe, let alone all of these planned pipelines projects that could stretch across the Midwest. We're talking Indiana, Illinois, Iowa, Missouri. We're talking all these different states for these carbon pipeline projects. These are where you take the carbon, you suck it out of the air, you shove it down into the ground because green weenie science doesn't make sense. But make it make sense for me, please. We're going to chat a little bit about that. We've got a lot to talk about there, but also I want to talk about Joe Biden throwing Kamala Harris under the bus again. Now, I don't know if he knows what he's doing, but he's throwing her under the bus again over this Ron DeSantis feud that she and he are having. Ron DeSantis and Kamala Harris, I guess, are feuding it out because Kamala Harris is trying to insert herself where she doesn't belong. She does not belong responding to the hurricane. Everybody's got it handled, and she's trying to really politicize the hurricane and make it a staple of her campaign, which is just really annoying. And Ron DeSantis is sick of it. So is Joe Biden, because he keeps throwing her under the bus. So we're going to get to that. Also, Tim Walz and Kamala Harris's abusive husband. Oh, sorry, allegedly abusive husband. There's reports out there of him being abusive. Yikes. Doug. So Tim Walz and Doug, they had themselves a cute little coffee date. And instead of paying for their own coffee, they forced a staffer to pay for their coffee. And it's kind of embarrassing. You're on the campaign trail. You would imagine that, you'd have your wallet on you, especially if they're campaigning on this whole, oh, I'm just like you, I'm middle class. These people don't even carry a wallet on them. Okay. They're not middle class. They forced their staffer to pay for their coffee because they're entitled to the coffee at this coffee shop. It was a campaign stop. So I'm going to be chatting a little bit about that because these little things really tell you who these people are. The fact that they don't pay for their own coffee, the fact that Kamala Harris's husband is allegedly abusive. These things tell you what kind of people are trying to get into the White House. So we'll chat about it. Archer Daniels Midland. Okay, I want to get into this carbon pipeline story. It's important. It affects you here locally. The Mahomet Aquifer is in jeopardy. The Mahomet Aquifer, we know, provides drinking water to people in Bloomington Normal, provides drinking water to people in Champaign. It could be compromised by these carbon pipelines. So listen up. 309-451-9299. ADM, Archer Daniels Midland. It's a big company, right? And this is the first place in Decatur where they've sequestered carbon out of the air and started injecting it into the ground. This all started happening, I think, back in 2011. Okay, so this is where you suck carbon out of the air and you shove it into the ground. And over the course of just a few years, you see ADM put 1 million metric tons of CO2, carbon dioxide, into this injection well. Okay, this is carbon emissions. They take it out of the air and they suck it down into the ground and they put it in an injection well. Now, it might sound like a lot because it is 1 million metric ton of carbon, but they did this over the course of a few years. Now, there's people, companies who have applications in for injection wells because you have to put an application in with the Environmental Protection Agency in order to sequester carbon and put it into the ground. Now, there's like 22 other applications out there outside of, we've got ADM, but there's more in Illinois. Okay, there's more planned for Illinois. And that's important because those applications, those projects, those carbon sequestration projects are going to be looking at putting 1 million metric ton of CO2, not over the course of a few years, but like within a year. So they're going to try to sequester way more carbon in a very short amount of time in comparison to ADM. So this is a large-scale projects, large-scale CO2 sequestration projects planned for Illinois. Now, the rub here is the monitoring wells. Now, these are the wells that are partnered with the injection wells down in the ground. Okay, it's going to get a little sciencey here, conservative cat. But these wells, these monitoring wells, help ensure that the CO2 doesn't leak, that it spreads as expected within the injection well. So the monitoring well is set up next to and helps out the injection well, and it ensures that everything is going fine. You don't want a leak. Okay, we saw a leak in Mississippi, and a lot of people were hospitalized. You don't want a leak of CO2, okay? Why do you have carbon dioxide detectors in your house? Because it's dangerous if there's a leak of gas, CO2. You do not want a CO2 leak, so that's why these monitoring wells are set up next to these injection wells. But in Decatur, guess what? Monitoring wells in the ground there next to the injection wells, they failed. Okay, not one, but both, according to Julie Fosdick. She's a landowner and she is an opponent of these CO2 pipelines, okay? So she said, like I said, there's 22 injection well applications into the Environmental Protection Agency for sites in Illinois that are scheduled to draft permits issued in the next 6 months. So in the next 6 months, we could have 22 injection wells scattered all around Illinois. And we're starting to see that these monitoring wells failed. Okay, so what that tells me is that we don't know how to engineer a solid monitoring well that will not fail. So that way we can ensure that, because these are really deep down into the ground, the only way we know that they're leaking is by these monitoring wells. Okay, so it's important that we have those monitoring wells. Why does this matter? Well, there was recently legislation in the State House and the State Senate. They all passed it, the state lawmakers of Illinois. It's called the Safe CCS Act. And they enacted this law, and really it makes Illinois just the second state after California to put a moratorium. So it's like a pause or a ban on approval of carbon dioxide pipelines until the Pipeline and Hazardous Safety Administration, this is a federal administration, a federal agency, decides on regulations for such projects until they can come up with federal guidelines. So this means that we're going to move forward with these as soon as the feds, with these carbon pipelines, as soon as the feds give the green light, okay, and give us regulations or whatever. And we're the second state to do this. But here's the thing, pipelines and injection wells are different. Injection wells, this is like, I don't know, this is junior league, right? This is like junior high. And then the carbon pipelines, those are senior high level science, okay? You've got junior high science where you've got injection wells, and these guys aren't even safe because we've got failing monitoring wells in Decatur. So there's no reason really for the carbon pipelines at this point because we can't even sequester it safe, okay, and shove it into the ground safety in these injection wells. Now it goes from injection well to injection well, the carbon pipelines, okay, and if injection isn't safe, there's no way we can transfer carbon from one injection well to another injection well. It's just not going to happen, okay? The science is pseudoscience, and they're going to be putting these CO2 injection wells under people's property, and a leak is your worst nightmare, okay? So 81 and I'm not alone in this, being an opponent of carbon pipelines. 81% of registered voters say they oppose corporations utilizing eminent domain for private projects, which this bill that they passed, the Safe CCS Act, they passed this, state lawmakers did. It puts a moratorium on approval, which means, okay, we're going to wait to approve it, but as soon as the federal guidelines come out, we'll approve it. It's approved to build these pipelines. And the thing about that is 81% of registered voters say, hey, these corporations utilizing eminent domain, which that bill also allows for, corporations can use eminent domain for these private projects. They're against that. The voters are against that. They took registered voters, surveyed registered voters across 6 Midwestern states. I think Iowa's in there, Illinois is in there. And the poll was commissioned by Bold Alliance and conducted by Inbold Research. That's important. But this is a critical story, because that poll tells us that voters aren't cool with this. Hey, I don't like corporations coming in using eminent domain and putting these private projects underneath my property, especially when there's leaks. I mean, we've got the Decatur monitoring well leak, and that poll, that 81% of registered voters say, I don't really like this thing. That poll was conducted prior to news of the Decatur monitoring well leaking or failing. They don't really, I don't know the science behind it, but people say they leak. They failed, and that's the only way we can really tell if the carbon is leaking or not out of the injection well. Injection well and monitoring well are different. Are you keeping up with me? 309-451-9299. So there were reports back in March that ADM had detected some corrosion in a section of one of their 2 deep monitoring wells. I guess both monitoring wells have failed. But they're moving forward with this project and 22 other injection well projects. Plus, in just a few years after the PHMSA, this is the Pipeline Hazardous Safety Administration, after they come up with federal guidelines, they're going to move forward with senior high level science of carbon pipelines when they can't even, get off first base here. They're going to try to get to second base without even getting off first base here. So, and really what this is, it's all political. It's all political because they want to take carbon out of the air. The politicians, Governor J.B. Pritzker wants to be able to say, oh, look, we're doing our part. We're achieving this goal of 0 carbon emissions. And it's just like, gosh, you got to be kidding me with this. This is unsafe. This is unsafe. And so I got to take a quick break. We're going to wrap this story up. On the other side, I want to talk a little bit about the EPA and when an injection well fails with these carbon pipelines. When those fail, what does the EPA do? So when we have monitoring wells fail, what does the EPA do? Because the injection wells, not the pipelines, the PHMSA, so that's the Pipeline Hazardous Materials Safety Administration, they take care of the applications and they take care of the carbon pipelines. Carbon pipelines, very different from the injection wells. The injection wells, it's all under the EPA. So after this Decatur monitoring well leak, what happened? What did the EPA do? Let's talk about it here on the other side. Look, this is really important stuff. I know I might be boring you with science class this morning, but this is important stuff because your property could be next. They can use eminent domain for these private projects, and your property could be next, especially if you live in rural McLean County and have a little bit of property there. And your drinking water could be compromised if one of these things leak or say a monitoring well fails. We would have no idea if it's leaking or not. And your drinking water could be compromised because this law that they passed, your stupid lawmakers in Illinois, what they passed here with the CCS Act, the Safe CCS Act, they did not address the eminent domain, and they did not address the Mahomet Aquifer or aquifer protection, and they did not address that in this law. They passed this, and it's going to make Illinois the second state after California to approve these carbon pipelines. while the Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Safety Administration decides on some guidelines. All right, I do have to take a quick break, but you're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9. Woohoo! Oopsie. Sorry about that, folks. Good morning. It's Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. Hope you are doing well this morning. Give me just a quick second here. Hey, good morning, folks. A little bit of technical difficulties, but I wanted to jump in here and talk a little bit about Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. I think there's some beef going on here, and we will get to that here for our radio friends on the other side. Joe Biden still wants to run for president, I'm pretty sure. And you know that Jill and Hunter Biden, they both want him to run for president, but unfortunately, he was ousted, okay, shattering the glass ceiling by becoming the first white cis male president to be forced out of a race, okay, and this is really bothering him, that he was ousted by top Democrats. They used the 25th Amendment against him. We know that. They said, hey, Joe, we can do this the easy way or the hard way. We're going to invoke the 25th Amendment if you don't bow out of the race. And it's kind of petty for him. I don't know if it's petty or if it's just him seeking revenge, but he is throwing Kamala Harris under the bus again. Don't know if this is his cognitive decline. I don't know if it's just him, seeking revenge on Kamala. I really don't know if he knows what he's doing, but it looks like he continues to undermine Kamala Harris's campaign here, and that's pretty funny. Maybe you shouldn't have ousted him. We're going to be chatting a little bit about that because there is a long history of Joe Biden snubbing Kamala Harris. Okay, this happened back in 2021, according to the New York Post. President Joe Biden seemed to snub Vice President Kamala Harris as they helped prepare meals at a DC soup kitchen. This is their first public appearance together. There were all kinds of Harris staffers who were upset about Joe Biden giving her the role of border czar, okay, and not handing or supporting her enough to handle that. This was back in 2021. So we're going to get to all of that, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris's beef and how he's kind of doing some revenge. Yes, I will be getting to the carbon pipelines. This is, local stuff. Usually do some local stuff from time to time, 1 to 2 stories a day. I carefully plan that out. But yes, carbon pipelines. We're going to be talking a little bit about that because the Decatur monitoring wells, they failed. I don't want to say leaked because I don't know how that science exactly works, how we know that they failed. But what they're supposed to do, these monitoring wells, they're supposed to work in conjunction with the injection wells where you actually store that CO2 in the injection well. There is CO2 there. And the only way to tell if that CO2 is leaking out of that injection well is through the monitoring well. Okay. So it's only been like 13 years or something like that. And now we have 2 failed monitoring wells at ADM. These are the ADM pipelines. So we're going to be chatting about that here on the other side. You're listening to Conservative Cat. Woohoo! Hey, good morning. It's Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9. So do appreciate you tuning in each and every single day. I am live on YouTube, Rumble. Sorry about that. A little bit of tech monkeys this morning. I double clicked something. And, it's Friday. I've got a bunch of coffee in me, and now I'm like ready to go. I'm like Energizer Bunny. And plus, I'm talking about carbon pipelines. And if you guys don't know me already, I'm a bit of a nerd, especially when it comes to local news. So I know a lot of you like fall asleep and you're like, okay, you're giving me a science lesson here. Well, this is important because they can use eminent domain. Your state lawmakers, and I'm telling you, every single one of them, there were some. One comes to mind, Senator Chapin Rose. He was really upset about the Mahomet Aquifer not being protected when they passed this law. Okay, there were no protections in place when they passed this law for the Mahomet Aquifer. Your drinking water could be affected because, and you won't even know it, because the monitoring wells next to these injection wells, these monitoring wells are supposed to ensure that these injection wells don't leak. CO2 leaking, you have a carbon dioxide detector in your house, most people do, to ensure that you don't die. Okay. Now, we've already seen a carbon pipeline rupture in Mississippi. You guys can go look up that story. Very tragic. They were carrying people out on 4-wheelers, their limp bodies. From what I understand, nobody died, though. Now, long-term health conditions, I don't know. But we do know that people were taken to the hospital after that leak. And it's serious. CO2 leaks are very serious. And these people are acting like it's not serious. And they're moving forward and they're trying to get on second base when they're on first base. They can't even get first base right. I know I'm using baseball analogies. Can you tell I'm not into sports? But they're using science for the injection wells, the monitoring wells, and they can't even get that science right. So now they're trying to do the carbon pipelines, which is a more complicated science, because if you can't even get the injection wells right, how are you to pipeline carbon from one injection well to the next if you can't even get the injection process correct? So like I said, there was a poll conducted. 81% of registered voters across 6 states, they surveyed these voters, and they said, hey, I'm not for corporations utilizing eminent domain. Eminent domain is just simply coming in and saying we have to do this we have to do this private project, and you have no say in it as a property owner. Okay, this is where the government comes in and they say, hey, this land is our land now. Okay, so eminent domain, they utilize eminent domain for a lot of these private projects. And this new poll said that the voters aren't having it. Before I took the break, I was telling you about this new poll. And this poll came out prior to news of the Decatur monitoring wells leaking. Now, they're supposed to last for a long time, the monitoring wells. But these guys, the monitoring wells only lasted about 13 years. Okay, they were one of the first in the nation, actually the first in the nation, ADM, to do this carbon sequestration thing. They were the first ones to do this. And this is kind of an example of what we can see happening to the rest of these injection wells. There's currently 22 applications across the state of Illinois. And those injection wells are actually going to be probably much worse, because not over the course of few years are they going to sequester a metric ton of carbon, but only over the course of maybe a few months, they will sequester a metric ton of carbon. So these pipelines or these injection wells are different than pipelines. Injection wells are going to be across the state of Illinois, and they're going to be like a intense version of what ADM has got. So we can imagine that their monitoring wells are going to fail as well. And if we're sequestering even more carbon into these injection wells, and if there's a leak, it's going to be a disaster. It's going to be a disaster. So they're moving forward with this technology simply because there's political pressure, right? JB wants to be able to say, "Oh, we took carbon out of the air. We're doing our part. We're the electric vehicle hub. We're moving towards what was it? The Climate Equitable Jobs Act or whatever." He says that we want no carbon emissions or all alternative energy by 2050. You're not driving a gas-powered car by 2050. That's what JB wants for the state of Illinois. And I was talking with Julie Fosdick. She's a landowner. She is working with advocates against this, with opponents against these pipelines. And on her property, they're about ready to put pipelines, injection wells, all near her in central Illinois. Now, Fosdick, she tells me that PHMSA, this is the Pipeline Hazardous Materials Safety Administration, they're only working on the pipeline regulations. Now we've got the Environmental Protection Agency, a different federal agency, working on the injection wells, not the pipelines. Like I said, they're different. The injection wells, that's all under EPA. EPA has regulations in place. And Fosdick, she says, what I find stupid is that EPA put out this proposed course of action after finding out that the Decatur monitoring wells failed, and they put out a course of action and what they demand of ADM to respond to this leak. And she goes, what I find stupid is that you should have figured this out. You should have figured this out prior to them leaking, prior to them failing these monitoring wells, before they issued the permits for the wells. So now they're like getting the EPA is trying to get all kinds of public comment now of what kind of course of action they need to take in order to address the monitoring well being or failing. And now they're engaging the public. Now they're trying to figure out, hey, what do we do now that there's a leak? You guys should have figured that out prior to putting them in the ground, right? You guys probably should have figured that out. Prior to issuing these permits and allowing these wells to even be there in the first place. Now, prior to the law being signed by Governor J.B. Pritzker, the Safe CCS Act, the lawmakers, they had expressed their concerns about eminent domain. Now, this is for the pipelines, not injection wells. Injection wells, they're already approved, and there's 22 applications, and they're probably going to be in Illinois here in the next 6 months. Okay, they're going to draft up. They're drafting up permits as we speak for these 22 corporations to inject carbon into the ground. And as we've seen in Decatur, those monitoring wells could fail, and we could have no idea if they're leaking or not into our very precious water supply, our air supply. And when these people tell you they're green and that they care about the planet, they don't. Okay, it's all about political pressure. It's all about, hey, can I say nice things on a microphone? That's what these politicians care about. They don't care about the planet. And this is all just a guise. This is all just a ruse. So, like I said, the lawmakers, some of them, not a whole lot, Chapin Rose comes to mind. There were a few others who expressed concerns about eminent domain and the Bahama Aquifer Protection. But that was not included in the Safe CCS Act. And just in a few years, I'm willing to bet that we're going to have these massive carbon pipeline projects. And we haven't even gotten the injection process to be safe yet. So that's my big issue here. Thanks for tuning in. You're listening to Conservative Cat. I do want to shift gears. Joe Biden, I think he still wants to run for president. You know, Jill and Hunter want him to be the president. Right? Because they get all kinds of, Hunter gets to be the loser that he is. And he's got daddy to pardon him for all of his crimes. Okay. Of course, Hunter wants Joe Biden to be president, shattering the glass ceiling by becoming the first cis white male president to be forced out of a race by his own party. Okay. That's kind of raw for Joe. Joe's kind of upset that this happened to him. Of course, we know the top Democrats, Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, they said, Joe, we're going to invoke the 25th Amendment if you don't bow out of this race, if you don't get out of this race. And he's not very fond, and he's never been fond of Kamala Harris. So now he keeps undermining her campaign, and I don't know if it's just pettiness. I don't know if he knows he's actively throwing her under the bus, or if this is just further cognitive decline. Is he just further? Is this just him being senile? I don't know. What I do know is back in 2021, prior to the senility really sinking in, President Joe Biden snubbed Vice President Kamala Harris. According to the New York Post, they were preparing meals. And I mean, this is all on video camera. They were preparing meals at a DC soup kitchen back in 2021. You remember this. This was their first public appearance together, and he snubbed her. Okay, he's never made an attempt to demonstrate any kind of fondness for his vice president in front of the cameras. In fact, I think that him appointing her to the border crisis was a way of like saying, yeah, I don't like you that much. I'm gonna make you take the blame and take the fall for this disaster at the border. Okay, so now a lot of Harris allies and her staffers have slammed. Now, this was back in 2021. They slammed Joe Biden for giving her tough jobs like the border crisis and not giving her any support. And they even accused the West Wing, so President Joe Biden and his staff, of giving her, Kamala Harris, less support than white members of his administration. Okay, so now we're caught up to speed here. We've established a pattern that Joe Biden does not like Kamala Harris. He hasn't liked her for years. Perhaps that's why he gave her the border crisis to deal with, or at least pinned it on her, because he doesn't like her. Okay, so he wants America to know that Kamala Harris was every bit of responsible for the past 4 years. Under the unpopular Biden-Harris policies. Everybody hates living under Joe Biden's America. Everybody does. And he does not want her to distance herself from him, okay, and from this administration. So he's come out several times and he says, oh, we sing from the same song sheet. She has every bit of responsibility over the last 4 years as I did, right? So now, Joe Biden, I'm imagining he did this, and I'm imagining that the Kamala Harris team is saying, hey, I wish you wouldn't do this. Please let us continue to run as if we're not a part of this administration, because that's been their tactic this whole time, is separating themselves. She never talks about her role as the vice president. She only talks about her role as the California attorney general, her time as a DA, her time as a senator. That's what she talks about the entire time she's on the campaign trail, and she's tried to separate herself from the administration, the Biden-Harris administration. He won't let her. And I'd imagine that the Kamala Harris team is very upset that he's doing that. Biden also appears to be handling Biden appears to be handling this hurricane and siding with Ron DeSantis. Yes, not on my bingo card. He is siding with that Ron DeSantis when it comes to this feud between Kamala Harris and Ron DeSantis. He's taking the side of Ron DeSantis. So it all started when Kamala Harris, out of the blue, blasted Ron DeSantis in a press conference for not taking one of her phone calls. Okay. Now, whether Ron says she's never called me. I don't know what the heck she's talking about. She's never called me. If you're wondering why the vice president would call a governor about a hurricane preparation when A, that governor has already spoke to the president, and B, the VP has never called the president or the governor before, but Kamala Harris has never called him before. Ron DeSantis is probably asking all the same questions. Why are you calling me? I'm working with the president right now. You've never called me before. You're clearly politicizing this. You're making Hurricane Milton all a part of your campaign. It's a campaign stunt. He's too busy. Okay, Ron DeSantis is too busy preparing and taking care of the victims of the Hurricane Milton. He's too busy for all of this campaign crap. So Biden was asked multiple times over the past few days about this feud, about this Kamala Harris-DeSantis feud, because Kamala called him out and blasted him for not taking a phone call. Okay, so recently, Joe Biden was asked if Ron DeSantis should be taking her phone calls. Take a listen to what he says here.
Mr. President, does Governor DeSantis need to take Vice President Harris's calls?
All I can tell you is I'm talking to Governor DeSantis. He's been very gracious. He's thanked me for all we've done. He knows what we're doing, and I think that's important.
Mr. President,
whoa! Taking the side of Governor Ron DeSantis. That's Joe Biden. And of course, that left Kamala Harris desperate for any kind of Florida official to pay attention to her. She wants this campaign stunt. She wants to be viewed as, responsive to Hurricane Milton and Hurricane Helene. She wants to be viewed as responsive because she hasn't been responsive, right? She went out there and she, gave like a press conference and bragged about the $700 measly dollars she was giving to the Hurricane Helene victims. Meanwhile, she's on Twitter talking about how they're giving all kinds of millions of dollars to Lebanon and additional funding. But she's desperate. She's desperate for any Florida official to pay attention to her. She finally found one. I've got to take a quick break, but I'm going to play this clip on the other side. She talks with the Florida mayor about responding to Hurricane Milton. And yeah, she was desperate to pull off this campaign stunt. So I'll be right back. It's Conservative Cat. Hey, good morning. So do appreciate you tuning in each and every single day. My name's Conservative Cat. You can subscribe to the YouTube channel today. When we come back, I'm going to be wrapping up this story about the Kamala Harris-Ron DeSantis feud. Clearly, she was so desperate to pull off this campaign stunt where she sought to have a recorded phone call with somebody. And she took precious time away from a Florida mayor to record a phone call to make it look like she's responding with the Florida officials, and then she's hanging out with Florida officials. So I'm going to be playing that here in just a little bit. Absolutely crazy. I just can't believe that we're living in this time period. So give me a quick second. I'll be right back. It's Conservative Cat. Woohoo! Good morning. Hey, it's Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9. Be sure to hit the like button on the YouTube channel and subscribe today. Find it Conservative Cat Show. Type it in your search bar. Before we took the break, I told you that Kamala Harris is desperate and was desperate for any Florida official to give her attention. And she starts talking with Mayor Welch, and he is the mayor of St. Petersburg, Florida. And it's really liberal there, really liberal. I've got a few friends who lived in the area there, and it's super liberal in this area. But Mayor Welch is on the phone with Kamala Harris. Let's take a listen to that phone call. Here we go.
Mayor Walz, Kamala Harris, how you doing?
Madam Vice President, thank you so much for checking in on us. You know, we're getting ready, we're prepared, and looking forward to rebuilding after this storm passes through.
Let me just first of all thank you for just answering the call to lead in the way that you have. You know, in a time of crisis, the folks are looking in your eyes to see something in you that lets them know everything's going to be okay. And I know that you had requested that FEMA have a full-service disaster recovery center in St. Petersburg, and that has been confirmed that has happened, and they're working with you to determine the right location. How's that coming along?
Well, thank you. That makes a big difference. We did get a chance to chat with Administrator Criswell, and that's really important to St. Pete to have that full service recovery center. You know, the outreach from the White House and from FEMA has been excellent, and we're really going to need your help to get the city stood back up, but really appreciate your partnership, Madam Vice President.
Okay, well, know that you got it, and know that you are invited to give any feedback about what you might need in real time, because you're the leadership on the ground, so you know what your folks need.
We'll absolutely do that, and we appreciate your partnership.
Please take care of yourself, Mayor, and I'll just stay in touch with your team.
Oh, wow. Wow. So I don't know if you guys have watched, there is it's like a documentary kind of, it's like a mockumentary, I guess. It's called Veep on HBO. I feel like I'm stuck in an episode of that. You've got her interrupting his handling of the hurricane. Okay, St. Pete, they were really hit hard. She's interrupting because she wants to pull off some sort of campaign stunt, clearly, with this phone call. This was not productive in any kind of way. I do have to take a quick break, but I want to tell you about how Kamala Harris struggled with the live broadcast on Hurricane Milton. Okay, she actually covers her mouth during this live broadcast, and she says we're live. It's a live broadcast, and she tries to inform her staff that it's a live broadcast before stumbling over her prepared notes. But she wanted to inform her team so that way they could feed her what I'm assuming questions on this panel. She was on like a Zoom call in regards to Hurricane Milton and the response there. So I feel like I'm stuck in an episode of Veep from HBO, the HBO series. Like, this can't be real. So we're going to play that audio. I think it's kind of funny. But my assessment is that Joe Biden knows exactly what he's doing. It may be the only thing he knows that he's doing. You know, he might not know who pooped his pants. He might not know where he's at and how he got into the room he's in. But one thing is for sure, I do think Joe Biden knows that he is seeking revenge on Kamala Harris for ousting him as the nominee. I'll be right back. It's Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9. Hey, folks, go ahead and smash that like button. We're going to be back chatting a little bit about Kamala Harris and her campaign stunt there with the mayor. Now, I do have a couple of friends. It's a very liberal area there, St. Pete. It's like a little boat town, and it's outside of Tampa, just outside of Tampa there. And obviously, this mayor is probably very, very liberal, and she was seeking attention from any Florida official that she could find to pull off this campaign stunt of her being on. It's all faked. It's all staged. It's all inauthentic, and that is the way of the Democrat Party. There is less than, I think, 25 days until the election, 24 days maybe. And you know, anything can happen. They are really not running this campaign well. Okay, with things like that, voters see right through that. They know that this isn't her having any kind of real effect about the effect on the response to Hurricane Milton. They know that this is fake, that this is staged, especially when you put it into context that she tried to call Governor Ron DeSantis. Now, that would have been good if they could have pulled it off, had there been like a phone call taped inauthentically staged, where, you know, she talked with Ron DeSantis about the response to Hurricane Milton. That would have been a pretty cool campaign stunt, because that would have shown, hey, I'm reaching across. Now, if she got like the endorsement, or, you know, even just got like, but she's using her role as vice president and her power currently as the vice president to stage these things and to make herself look like she's got any real power. As somebody pointed out on the live stream here, the vice president, you know, doesn't have any real actual power. She had no power as VP. No, she didn't have any power as VP. I would imagine most vice presidents don't. However, Joe Biden, I mean, she's so unlikable, and that Joe Biden didn't like her. He put it on her plate, the border. Okay, appointed her as the border czar, and that's very clear that he doesn't like her, because it was a disaster, and they know it's going to remain a disaster because they're anti-border, they're pro-open borders. So he gave her that as a form of revenge, and clearly her allies and her staff have come out and said that, hey, he's not supporting us in this unmitigated disaster at the border. He's not providing us as much support as some of his white members of the administration. He's not providing us support, Joe Biden. So, you know, she had power she does have power as much as a vice president does. She could have addressed, especially because you have presidential authority. He appointed her the border czar. He gave her presidential authority over that border. And then her Inflation Reduction Act, American Rescue Plan, she is a tie-breaking vote. And she used those tie-breaking votes to pass legislation that led to the highest inflation we've ever seen in America ever. You've got the American Rescue Plan Act and the Inflation Reduction Act. I do want to point out in the Inflation Reduction Act, what do you mean? That resulted in tons of inflation. It's called the Inflation Reduction Act, Kat. Well, in the Inflation Reduction Act, they just gave out a bunch of money. Okay, and anytime you saturate America's economy with a bunch of money, and people don't earn that money by providing goods and services, you wind up with hyperinflation. For example, in the Inflation Reduction Act, there were across the board, federally, across every single state, you get an electric vehicle tax credit. And it's just a big old fat check, $7,500 to go buy yourself an electric vehicle. Okay, when you put $7,500 into the pockets of people who didn't earn that money and they go spend it, that's where inflation happens. Because guess what? What just happened? Ford, right after that vote was held and right after she broke that tie, they upped their prices. Okay, because they know that the Americans all got these stipends. I mean, this $7,500 tax credit to go buy electric vehicles. So they raised the prices. And that's what causes inflation. Okay. When you put money in people's pockets that they didn't earn by providing a good or a product or service. So she did have power. Traditionally, vice presidents don't have that much power. Okay. But in this case, you've got this vice president who was appointed, given presidential authority over the border, which typically doesn't happen. He did this, I think, because he knows that she wouldn't be able to handle it and he didn't like her. And that's why he gave her the border crisis and really just pinned it on her. He knows that she wasn't actually going to address it. But when you are given presidential authority to take care of something, then yeah, you can take care of that thing. She had two very substantial votes, tie-breaking votes, the American Rescue Plan Act and the Inflation Reduction Act, which rarely happens because, we usually have a majority and, on most bills, right? But in this case, it was hard to get those past the finish line, and she broke the tie on those. So she did have quite a bit of authority. Look, man, I don't know what to tell you. If she was given presidential authority, the president gave her this task. I mean, it doesn't get much more clear that she had power over that border. Typically, you're right. Vice presidents don't have all that much authority. That's clear because she's trying to insert herself in this Hurricane Milton relief. And this response, she doesn't have any authority there. This is Governor Ron DeSantis' state, and Joe Biden didn't give her, unlike the border, authority to address those issues. He gave her authority to address the border. All right, I'll be right back. Woohoo! Hey, good morning. It's Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. So do appreciate you tuning in each and every single day. I do want to share this with you. So the vice president, Kamala Harris, she was on this live broadcast about responding to Hurricane Milton. Okay. And this is really embarrassing. She covers her mouth, folks, to inform her team before she starts reading her prepared notes that this is a live broadcast. Now, I don't know if she wasn't briefed that this was going to be live, and then she got there and she was shocked by that, and she had to inform her team. I don't know why she had to inform her team that it was a live broadcast. Perhaps she wanted them and mouthed to her staff that it was a live broadcast because she wanted them to feed her questions on the fly. Okay. It appears that she is being fed questions. I don't know if she has an earpiece in or what, or if they're there, and they're providing her the teleprompter, or a script of some kind, but she mouths to her staff, who I'm assuming is they're in the room there. But she covers her mouth like this, and she says it's a live broadcast. Now, I don't think that she thought the mic was on either. So this is really funny. I feel like I'm stuck in an episode of Veep. This is an HBO series. Go watch it. This is your sign to go watch it. It's kind of like a documentary style, mockumentary style. But take a listen. Here we go.
Flood. We really got to watch those areas and those communities. So it takes quite a while for that water to drain.
So she covers her mouth with her hands, and then she says, it's a live broadcast. It's a live broadcast. She's like informing her team of this.
Thank you very much.
Hey, Ken, I have a question for you. You mentioned words matter, and I know there is a lot of, to the people of Florida, and in particular, the people of the Tampa region, we urge you to take this storm seriously.
Flood.
We urge you to take this storm seriously. Yeah, I think people are. So, like I said, my assessment here is that Joe Biden is throwing her under the bus purposefully. I think that he doesn't know much about what's going on, but we do know that Joe Biden's kind of mean. I think he likes revenge. Okay. And I'm sure he doesn't know what day it is. I'm sure he doesn't know how he got to the room he's in right now. And I'm sure he doesn't know who pooped his pants. But one thing is for sure, I think there's nothing he knows better than revenge, and knows how to screw somebody over. So like I was saying earlier, Kamala Harris tasked with the border. She was appointed the border czar. Typically, as I was telling you, vice presidents, they don't have that much power. Clearly demonstrated in that phone call with the St. Pete mayor, Mayor Welch. She tries to say, oh, anything you need, I'll provide it for you. But vice presidents really don't have all that much power. Typically, Kamala Harris is kind of a different breed, though, in a sense that she was able to break some ties. Tie-breaking votes, the American Rescue Plan Act, the Inflation Reduction Act. I've gone through several times how Inflation Reduction Act didn't actually reduce inflation, but rather increased it tenfold, 20% actually, 20% increase in inflation since Joe Biden has taken over. Biden-Harris, but she broke those ties. She also was given authority over the border by the sitting president. So she's been given a lot of power, and she's done very little with that power. Now she's trying to, get out there and say, oh, anything you need on the ground, FEMA, I'll make sure you get it. Mayor Welch from St. Pete. And we all know that you're not a part of the club. That's why Joe Biden actually appointed you with the border, because he doesn't like you. You're not likable, not even by people of your own party, Kamala. So I think it's like 20-ish days until the election. Anything can happen. It looks like she is, and I'm kind of worried about this. She's going up, or Trump is going up at the polls. I'm worried that this is giving us like a false sense of security. I don't want people to not go out and vote. Go out and vote today. Just get your vote in. You never know what's going to happen on election day. We need your vote. And Kamala Harris, Walz, they can continue running this bad campaign. Like, it was bad. She calls that mayor, and it's clearly staged. It's inauthentic. It's faked, which is just the Democrat way, right? But it gets worse because she's got Tampon Tim out there, and then she's got Doug, the low simps, or the low T simp soy boy out there, and they're making campaign stops, but they're making themselves look like fools. Okay, her husband Doug, which is allegedly abusive. He's allegedly abusive, by the way. And Tim, they went out for a cup of coffee. A cute little coffee date in Phoenix, Arizona. I do want to play this. This clip of them out at the cafe. Here we go. Let's take a listen. Oh, hold on. Let me pull this up. Okay, let's take a listen. Here we go.
Here, It's going to go down a little bit. It just went down $100.
Thank you so much.
We'll do that for you from the White House. All right.
Thank you.
All right. Bye. Nice seeing you, everybody. Beautiful. There you go.
Yeah, they are. 3 boys.
Perfecto. Perfecto.
Okay. Yeah, that wasn't the clip of them at the cafe. That was actually our GOP nominee helping families who are struggling paying for groceries at a grocery store under the Harris Biden regime. And he was using his own money. This should be the right clip. I'm not too sure here, folks. It could be the right clip. Let me see here. Here we go. Hold on. Here we go.
For a moment. Has being second gentleman changed your own view of perceived gender roles or what it means to be a man?
This is something I've thought about a lot and something I've spoken about a lot. There's too much of toxicity, masculine toxicity out there, and we've kind of confused what it means to be a man, what it means to be masculine, where you've got this trope out there that you've got to be tough and, angry and lash out to be strong. It's just the opposite. Strength is how you show your love for people. Strength is how you are for people and how you have their back and how you stick up for other people and pushing out against bullies. That's what I believe it is. So every time I can speak against this toxicity, we're seeing it with our younger people. We're seeing it in our discourse and our politics. In the media, you're seeing it as it relates to so many of the issues that we're pushing back on. So I think it's a problem, and I'm going to continue to use this platform every time I get to speak out.
Talked about your role here is how your role has reshaped the perception of masculinity. And I'm not sure you planned on that, but you are an incredibly supportive spouse. Has that been an evolution for you? And do you think that's part of the role you might play as first gentleman?
It's funny. I've started to think a lot about this. I've always been like this. My dad was like this. And to me, it's
talked about your role here is
toxic masculinity. Sorry. Like I said, that was not the right clip. It's the wrong clip. But I will get to the clip of Doug and Tim out at the cafe. They're having a cute little coffee date, and they actually don't pay the workers. They have a staffer of theirs pay the workers. They didn't have their wallets on them, and it's really quite embarrassing. But did you guys see Doug Emhoff? This headline in the Daily Mail. Quote, Doug Emhoff was a foul-mouthed jerk and a misogynist who hired a trophy secretary because she was pretty, and then he retaliated against women who didn't flirt back with him at a LA law firm. And this is what his ex-staff of that LA law firm claimed. Now, that was an exclusive out of the Daily Mail. So, yeah, this whole, I'm not a toxic, I'm against toxic masculinity. Not really buying it, Doug. Because your ex-staffers at this law firm are calling you a misogynist, said you were a jerk, said that you hired a trophy secretary because she was pretty. Interesting. Now, let's see if I can get this right clip. Come on. I want to get to this clip of Tim Walz and Doug Emhoff out at this coffee shop, and they actually don't pay for their coffee. Let's look at this clip. Here we go. So he gets the coffee, Doug and Tim. He's got like a little pastry or something. The two walk off together, practically holding hands. And then the staffers left here to pay the coffee workers, right, for the coffee and for the pastry.
Thank you so much. And someone will be up here to pay. Right? No, like he's coming. Thank you so much.
Okay. And she goes, I don't have any money. They didn't have their wallets on them. They didn't pay for their own coffee because they're entitled jerks. But somebody will be up here to pay. Meanwhile, contrast with Donald Trump, who pays for people's groceries with his own money. And that it wouldn't bother me so much, but that you're not carrying your wallet with you, that you're not carrying keys with you. Okay, it wouldn't bother me. I get it. You're running for president or vice president. In this case, Doug Emhoff, Doug Emhoff they're running for president, Kamala Harris and Doug Emhoff, and you're the second gentleman right now. Okay, she's the vice president right now. Okay, I get it. Maybe you don't carry your wallet on you or your keys on you all the time. Fine, whatever. But you're running on this whole I'm middle class shtick, right? They took the coffee and walked away. Tim Walz and Doug Emhoff. Okay, they took it, they walked away. They didn't even pull out like a cute little joke like, you got this, like to the coffee workers, which is what Donald Trump does some of the time if he doesn't have his wallet on him or anything like that, or if he doesn't have the money on him. And that his staffers have to come pay, he'll like make a joke and he'll pull out a joke is like, you got this, right? You're taking care of my my burger at McDonald's for me, right? He does that a lot. He goes into McDonald's and gets burgers. They don't even make a joke. They don't even really acknowledge the coffee workers' existence. They just grab their products and then they leave and they don't say anything. And they walk off with their coffee like they're entitled to that coffee. I know it's a small detail, but even the staffer who said a different staffer is going to be would be along to pay for this was caught off guard. She thought like they would say something to the workers or, they'd make a joke about, oh, you got this or something. And their whole shtick is that they are running as middle class people. Okay, that's their whole campaign is that they're middle class and they're just like you and me. And, the Doritos thing where Kamala Harris, she and Tim go into a gas station and buy Doritos and corn nuts or whatever, and they stage that, they faked that. You don't even try to look middle class. Okay, this is embarrassing. You just walked off with your coffee like you were entitled to it. You had said nothing to the coffee workers. Not even a thank you, really. I mean, they were handed the coffee, and I didn't hear them say thank you. Hold on, let me.
Here, you guys go slow.
No, they just walk off. Not even a thank you to the coffee worker, coffee shop worker. That's so sad. That's so sad. And they just walk off entitled. Donald Trump never does that. He might not even have his wallet on him, which I get it. He's a former president. He's got people for that, right? Who follow up and pay for him. But Donald Trump, at least, if he doesn't have his wallet on him, will like say thank you or acknowledge the worker's existence. These people walk off. Doug and Tim walk off like their poop doesn't stink. It's really kind of sad. All right, I do have to take a quick break, but you're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9. The news and talk of Bloomington Normal. We'll be right back. Hey, good morning. So do appreciate you tuning in each and every single morning. When we come back, we're going to be talking a little bit for our radio friends. We're going to be talking about Donald Trump going on this podcast with Andrew Schulz. Now, Donald Trump has got these comedians on this podcast laughing so hard. I have not seen anybody laugh so hard in my life. This is pretty funny. Donald Trump going on this podcast and he's getting these comedians to laugh and roll on the floor practically laughing. They're like belly grabbing and clapping. It's kind of funny to watch. But he goes on this podcast and he makes some jokes about Sleepy Joe. I have all of the receipts of Joe Biden actually sleeping in public, like falling asleep in public. It's been several times, more times than I can count on my two hands. Okay, he's fallen asleep in public. So we're going to be chatting a little bit about that. There's also this good news story. It's kind of a good news story. It's a sad story, but with a happy ending. It's that this dog, and he was rescued after a scumbag left him tied to a fence during Hurricane Milton. And this little dog is doing much, much better. And he's doing better than probably ever before. So I really want to get to that story. It's heartwarming. Governor Ron DeSantis addressed this dog who was left for dead. Some owner left him for dead. And what is really heartwarming about that is, you've got in tragedy, a lot of people will say that, you see the best in people when there's times of crisis. Humanity often comes together and we put our differences aside, which is true. But there's also the other side of that on the spectrum here, where in times of crisis, the worst may come out, where you've got people tying up dogs and leaving them for dead in a hurricane, right? Or in times of crisis, that saying where they, I'll shove you if I'm drowning. If we're both drowning, what will happen is humans will use the other person as trying to use them as a flotation device, right? If you've got two people drowning, sometimes that happens. And in times of crisis, humanity can either come together, put aside differences, or the worst of humanity comes out. And this story tells you the story of both sides. I mean, you've got the side of, good coming out, coming together, putting differences aside. And then you've got the other side of that spectrum where you've got the bad, right? The trooper who saved this dog, obviously the good of humanity, the best of humanity in times of crisis, he stops what he's doing and he notices this dog, which he's kind of hard to notice because he's like belly deep in water and there's brush everywhere. And he notices this dog and he goes to save this dog. The psycho who left this poor little pup, for dead, that proves the other side of the spectrum where the worst of humanity can come out. The worst of humanity also in that Kamala Harris uses her vice presidential position to make herself look good on the campaign. That is also the worst of humanity, and politicizing this storm. That's the worst of humanity coming out. And there's good people in times of crisis, and then there's really crappy people. Kamala Harris is one of those really crappy people who uses tragedy and politicizes it for her own gain. So she was middle class. Dude, no, I don't know. I don't know how much more I can explain that she was not middle class. She was from Westmount, Canada. Okay, Canada. This suburb is like the second wealthiest suburb in all of Canada, and her parents were Ivy League graduates. Okay, that's not middle class. Woo! Hey, good morning. It's Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. You can find me on the YouTube. Just type in your search bar, Conservative Cat Show, and subscribe today. Coming up in just a little bit, we are going to be talking about a cute little puppy, a little pup, who was saved by a trooper. Yes, he was saved by a trooper during Hurricane Milton. He was left for dead by some psycho owner of his, or somebody tied him up and left him for dead during Hurricane Milton. He was already belly deep in water, and you had this trooper come out and save him. Governor Ron DeSantis addressed that. I also want to talk about Donald Trump going on the Andrew Schulz podcast, and he had these comedians howling. He had these comedians laughing so hard. Donald Trump has this gift of like just making you laugh. It's because he's just got he's a decent person. Donald Trump is, and we talked in the previous segment about Kamala Harris's husband Doug and Tim Walz snubbing this coffee worker and grabbed their coffee and left without paying, as if they were entitled to this coffee, and they just assumed one of their staffers would pay for it. And it's just so sad to see the stark differences between people and humanity, and we'll get to that with the dog story and Hurricane Milton. I mean, you've got somebody who's willing to leave this dog for dead and belly deep in water. He almost died. This trooper on the other side, the good in humanity, comes out during crisis. He sees this dog barely and saves this dog. And then you've got people like Kamala Harris who politicize the hurricane and pull off, little campaign stunts. So there's good, evil, and Trump, he's got the ability to make people laugh. That's one thing that you can say. Love him, hate him. He can definitely make people laugh. He had these two chameleons laughing because he was talking about Sleepy Joe and how he falls asleep on camera several times. I mean, I've got the receipts. I can count. I can't even count on both my hands. It's been too many times now that Joe Biden has fallen asleep. He gets this nickname for a reason. He's fallen asleep on camera several times. Let's play this clip of Trump on the Andrew Schulz podcast. I don't know anything about this podcast. He just appeared on it. He's trying to get his name out there during the campaign season, but take a listen.
Over the last week, I have to, we talk about funny or sad. I think it's more sad than funny.
Yeah.
He has one ability I don't have.
Yeah.
He sleeps. He can sleep. This guy goes on a beach and he lays down on one of those, 6 ounce, they weigh 6 ounces and you can't lift it.
Yeah.
They're meant, no, they're meant for children,
Yeah.
young people,
Yeah.
and old people to lift.
Yeah.
They're aluminum, hollowed aluminum.
Yeah.
They weigh very little and he can't lift. And somebody convinced him he looks good in a bathing suit. And when you're 82, typically bathing suits aren't going to make you look great.
Right,
You're
right.
not going to be enhanced.
Yeah.
All right. It's just one of those things. I can't be sure about that, but typically,
Depends what he's packing. He could.
I don't
have
know
it
what
like
the
that.
hell he's packing, but I don't want to, and I don't want to know either. I don't know. But he has an ability to fall asleep while on camera. He can lie down on one of those things.
Yeah.
And in minutes, he's stone cold out.
How does he do
And he's
it?
got cameras
How does
because he's the
do it?
president, so they have cameras on him.
Yeah.
And then they show him sleeping on the beach.
Yeah.
You'll never see me sleeping in front of camera.
How do we?
You'll never see me sleeping on camera. I mean, I've got the receipts, folks. I mean, Joe Biden, he fell asleep during a environmental conference. That's back in 2021 with him on the, he's got that black mask on and he just keeps nodding off on camera. That was back in 2021. Then you had him falling asleep at the memorial service for the Maui wildfire victims, which is just the worst instance that comes to mind when I was pulling these. I mean, several instances. Okay. To be fair, I probably would have fell asleep during the environmental conference, this radical leftist environmental conference that he was at. But the Maui wildfire victims, no, you can't do that. He has routinely fallen asleep at memorials, by the way. He was at the 80th anniversary of D-Day, and it was a memorial service. He fell asleep there. Such disrespect. To those who served. He also fell asleep during a press meeting. It was like a press meeting. It was just him and Naftali Bennett, who is the prime minister of Israel at the time. And falling asleep during a press meeting with the prime minister of Israel. That is going to show Hamas who's in charge. Yeah, give me a break. So weak. In other words, Sleepy Joe, he's got his nickname for a reason. Okay, he's got his nickname for a reason. All right, I do have to take a quick break, but you're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9. We're going to play another clip from that podcast. And look, Donald Trump goes on this podcast. I know this isn't a sex podcast, right? Andrew Schultz, they're both comedians. I have no idea what their podcast is like really about. I'd imagine they just are two guys talking and making jokes. Now, it's not as popular as the sex podcast Call Her Daddy that Kamala Harris was on. I can't even talk about what they talk about on that show. But Trump comes off as natural and authentic. Kamala Harris is consistently getting on these podcasts and out there campaigning. And every time she opens her mouth, all that comes to my head is this is faked. This is staged. She's inauthentic and she's stupid and she looks like she's a deer in headlights. Okay. So, yeah, every time she sits down for an interview, it's scripted propaganda. Kamala Harris's interview with Howard Stern made me laugh so hard. It was a bunch of butt kissing, if you ask me. So Kamala Harris doesn't even dare to talk to anybody without a script. And it's extremely telling. You've got Donald Trump out here being his authentic self, making jokes about Joe Biden sleeping. And it's funny, quippy. He never has gone after Joe Biden in a way that's, he's a dictator. He's a threat to democracy. Although these people actually are the threat to democracy because they want to take away your free speech. I've got a story on that coming up here as well. Hopefully I'll be able to get to it. It's an Arizona mother. This is terrible. She's facing charges. Body cam footage shows the police violating a right. She's facing charges. This was out of Surprise, Arizona. And Mayor Skip Hall criminalized freedom of speech, really. Freedom to criticize your government, okay? Freedom of speech is, we know, as Americans, we know that First Amendment is to limit the government. That's why it exists. And we have the right to peacefully assemble and criticize our elected officials. And that's what she did during a city council meeting in Surprise, Arizona. And then she got charges and arrested. And this poor woman is still facing these charges. These charges haven't been dropped. Okay, so I've got that story as well. You're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9. We're going to be back in just a little while. Hey, good morning. I so do appreciate you tuning in each and every single day. When we come back, I do want to talk with you a little bit about Donald Trump and, how he comes up and how this process kind of happens where he comes up with these nicknames. Okay, so he goes through his thought process for coming up with nicknames, and I think it's kind of funny. So we're going to play that clip on the other side. Plus, I got to take a brief pause because I'm going to be chatting with Andy from the Bloomington Bisons. It's hockey, and we're going to be chatting about it on the radio. So I'm going to take a brief pause on the stream. If you guys want to go to the radio, you can. I just can't have Andy on the stream. We're doing it solely on the radio. So if you guys want to head to the radio, you guys can do that. It's a local story about our local hockey team. So we will be talking about that a little bit, but then I'll be back and I'll talk a little bit more about that dog, Hurricane Milton. that was saved by a trooper. The best of humanity comes out in times of crisis, and it's so nice to see it. But also the worst, okay? You've got this guy tying up a dog. I hope that they find him and they hold him accountable. You don't mess with kids. You don't mess with pets. I mean, that's that is what I always say. You don't mess with kids, you don't mess with pets, which is why I hate abortion, and I absolutely can't stand the whole immigration thing that's going on in Springfield, Ohio, where they're killing the pets. They are. I mean, I see the videos every single day. They're saying that that's fake news. It's not. You've got tons of residents who have come out and said that that's happening. Can't stand that. Can't stand the filleting of cats and dogs happening in Springfield, Ohio. So we're going to be chatting a little bit about Donald Trump's nicknames. And then also I want to get to the Florida State Trooper who rescued the dog, finding him in distress, tied up to a pole, submerged in a puddle without a fighting chance against this hurricane. And it's just such a sweet story. And Governor Ron DeSantis, he actually comes out and chats about this dog. So it's going to be a good story. You guys can go ahead, smash that like button and share this out with your friends. We'll be right back. Good morning. Hey, this is Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9. So do appreciate you being here. I need to address this. This is going to bother me. The woman in Arizona where I live violated the rules of open forum. She attacked a city official verbally, violating the rules of forum, not a free speech violation. Okay, so the rule in and of itself is a free speech violation, and now we know that they've rolled that rule back, actually. So what the rule was, it prohibited public complaints about city officials. That is so anti-First Amendment. The whole point of the First Amendment is to limit government, okay? Your freedom of speech to speak out against government, and you can't limit speech in a way that you cannot, you limit speech, and there's a rule. Hey, during public comment, you can't address or verbally attack city officials. Okay, if you want to say that she attacked, she still has that right under the Constitution, First Amendment. You have the right to verbally even attack somebody. Okay, you have the right to cuss. You have the right to really say anything. Okay, First Amendment. You have the right to literally, quite literally say anything, even if that means attacking a city official. But that's not what she did, folks. What she did was she took issue with the city attorney's pay raise. Okay, there's nothing more fundamental about America than getting up there and talking about where your taxpayer dollars are going and how it's going to city officials. And they keep raising this guy's pay rate, and she doesn't like that because he's not doing his job correctly. Okay, blatant disregard for the Constitution. Woohoo! Hey, good morning. It's Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. Coming up in just a little bit, we will be talking about Donald Trump and how he actually comes up with these nicknames. Okay, so on a podcast, he actually discussed his thought process for coming up with these sophisticated nicknames like Sleepy Joe, Comrade Kamala, Tampon Tim, right? So he was on a podcast and he talked about how he comes up with these nicknames, and he reveals his thought process. Do also want to get to Florida State Trooper rescuing a dog after he found him distressed, tied up to a pole, and he was in this puddle without a fighting chance against this hurricane. And this Florida State Trooper swoops in, saves the day. In times of crises, I really do think that the best of humanity comes out. We put aside our differences and we do the right thing. but it can also bring out the worst in people. For example, this guy who actually tied up this dog and didn't give him a chance to get out of the hurricane, which is so sad. We've got so much to get to, but I'm very excited because guess what? Drum roll, please. Andy Silch is with me. He is the play-by-play guy and the director of media relations for the Bloomington Bison. So excited he's here with me. And also Chris Murphy, who does your sports in the morning. Hey, good morning, guys. It's nice to see you guys. Okay, and I've got another one. Is it possible we could see future NHL stars here in Bloomington? That'd be pretty cool, right? Okay. Now I've got to ask you, when I go to a Bloomington Bison match, right? It's called a match in hockey. You're gonna have to help me, Andy. Game. Okay, it's a game. Thank you, Chris Murphy. I'm not well versed in sports, but it's a game. Or the hockey. Now I want to know. Do you see the hockey players get beat up? Because what I know about NHL or hockey is that they get beat up pretty bad, and like I do kind of like fights. I do watch some fighting, but I've heard that NHL stars they will not repair their teeth until the end of the season. So like they'll have like missing teeth, and then they'll be like, "All right, I'll repair them until after the season's over." Do the Bloomington Bison, those players, do they have to do that kind of thing? Oh gosh. Hmm. Okay. I also want to know what kind of promotions are you going to be having? Good morning, folks. This is Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9. You can subscribe to the YouTube channel. I do want to get to a few stories here. I do want to play this clip of Donald Trump on the podcast, the Andrew Schultz podcast, where these comedians were laughing at Donald Trump, with Donald Trump. They were laughing with Donald Trump about how he comes up with his nicknames, his sophisticated nicknames like Comrade Kamala or Tampon Tim. Try saying Comrade Kamala 5 times. Comrade Kamala, Comrade Kamala, Comrade Kamala. It's kind of hard. Very different. There's a sharp contrast here between Kamala Harris going on this sex podcast, Call Her Daddy, and she was so authentic. She proved how pathetic she was when she went onto that onto that podcast and for that interview. But like I said, this is probably not like it's not as popular as the Call Her Daddy podcast, this one that he's on. But good for him going out there and being natural and talking with people and getting outside of the mainstream media, because the mainstream media hates him. And he's going on with these podcasters. And I think that's going to help him, because as Kamala Harris goes out there on Call Her Daddy sex podcast and she starts to look like a deer in headlights, you've got Donald Trump here looking so authentic. He's not scripted, unlike Kamala, where every time she sits down for an interview, it feels like propaganda. I mean, people see it and they're like, this kind of feels awkward. It feels like propaganda. It feels cheesy. It feels faked. It feels staged. And she never talks with anybody off script. Never. And that is extremely telling. We do want to get to this story with the Florida State Trooper rescuing the dog. It's so sweet. He rescues a dog. I do also want to get to this Surprise Arizona woman. Body cam footage shows that her rights were violated. Rights were violated. He says, Augusta, I don't know. This commenter on YouTube, he says, the woman in Arizona where I live violated the rules of open forum. Okay, the rules themselves were a violation of her constitutional rights. Okay, the First Amendment. The rules that they drafted here for Surprise Arizona, the rules during public comment was that you couldn't make public complaints about your city officials, which kind of destroys the purpose of public comment in general. Like what? You're going to go up there and say nice things about your city officials? No, usually this is a platform for you to air your grievances about your city officials and about government. Okay. So the worst part about all of this is that they are refusing to drop the charges in this blatant disregard for the Constitution. She's being criminally charged despite that rule. So that rule that you say that she violated, right? The rules of forum that she had agreed to, despite them removing that rule. Okay, they had to remove that rule because it is such a blatant violation of the Constitution. They had to remove that rule. And they removed that rule, but they still haven't dropped the charges against this woman. So it's really kind of sad. Rebecca, she's a dedicated wife, mother, and she was forcibly removed in handcuffs while speaking during the public comment section over her concerns about the city attorney possibly receiving a pay raise. Her 10-year-old daughter was present. She witnessed the traumatic event. And it's just so tragic, this story out of Arizona. We are going to get to Donald Trump, don't you worry. Hey, good morning. It's Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, the news and talk Bloomington Normal. Before I took the break, I was telling you about Donald Trump on the Andy Schultz podcast. Now, these are a few comedians, and they have a podcast, and Donald Trump talked about how he comes up with these sophisticated nicknames like Comrade Kamala, Tampon Tim, Sleepy Joe.
I'm good with names, You
are. You're very good.
You are. Yeah. Pocahontas.
Yeah.
We have names.
What about and there was Tampon Tim was good. What about
the problem with Tampon Tim? It's hard to say.
Yeah.
In other words,
it's a mouthful.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
And you can't stutter it through when you call it. It's really a lousy word to say.
Yeah.
But it's quite accurate, right? There are some like Comrade Kamala. It's a little hard to say. She's comrade because she's obviously a communist.
Yeah.
She's horrible.
Yeah.
So I call her comrade.
Yeah.
And it's not bad. But when you put the names together,
Yeah.
it's a little, you got to be able to No, you got to be able to put it out there. But we have a lot of good ones. A lot of them I can't go into with you because
Why
some
not?
of my
Give me
best
some.
ones,
Give me
some
some.
of my best ones are from the Republican primaries.
Oh, yeah.
And they're all friends of mine now. I'm good with names.
Ron DeSanctimonious probably was one of my favorites. I did like Ron DeSanctimonious because the vocabulary. I mean, how many people know what DeSanctimonious means, right? You'd have to look it up. That was the beauty of that one. But they're like I said, Trump is so authentic, and the problem with Kamala Harris is that she's so inauthentic that every time she gets out there, it's like cringy and faked and staged, and it's just going to hurt her. Podcasts like this are going to help Donald Trump because he has personality. Kamala Harris doesn't have personality. And what sucks is that our campaign is trying to run on her personality, and her personality isn't all that great, right? So like they need to start running on some sort of policy, but their policies they've taken from Donald Trump too. So it's just bad. It's just bad. And it's clearly showing in the polls. So, all right, I got to go, but you guys have a blessed weekend. Bye-bye. I love you. I'm going to continue on the YouTube stream. Head on over there. I've got a few stories I want to hit prior to ending the live stream, but you guys can go to YouTube and subscribe, and we'll be right back on the live stream on YouTube. You guys can head there for a few more stories exclusive to the stream. Bye-bye. Love you, radio friends. You have a blessed weekend and stay safe. Okay, good morning, friends. Thanks so much for tuning in. I so do appreciate you being here on the stream. A few exclusive stories for you, and this content doesn't happen without you guys subscribing, so go ahead and subscribe. Also, be sure to visit our advertisers that we air on the radio, Cities 92.9. You can see the logo up in the top right-hand corner there. All right, so let's get into this Florida State Trooper who rescued a dog. I want to talk about this. He rescued a dog after finding him in distress, tied up to a pole. This is really tragic that somebody did this. And like, as I was saying, the best of humanity and the worst of humanity comes out in times of crisis. I do want to play this. This is a clip from Ron DeSantis, where he talks about the dog and having clean bill of health. The dog does. The vet gave him a clean bill of health. Let's take a listen.
The vet, the dog has a clean bill of health. And who knows, maybe we'll do some adoption, put the dog up for adoption, and we can have some people in Florida come and compete for it and take it. But, it's just like, people do a lot of dumb things, but you just see that. And so I hope they find the person who did it, and that person should have the book thrown at him. We've got very good laws in Florida against animal cruelty. These dogs, we've got dogs that are going to be helping in the storm. These police working dogs, they're great. They're great canines. So we don't have tolerance for that in Florida. I thought it was outrageous that somebody would do that.
Oh, yeah, there's Ron DeSantis talking about this. And like I said, one of the worst crimes a human can commit is leaving an innocent animal to defend itself. You don't mess with kids, you don't mess with dogs and pets. This is even worse because this dog had no fighting chance. I mean, you left this dog for dead, did not have a fighting chance. It's not only that it couldn't defend itself, it's just had no fighting chance. It was going to die. So this story did have a good ending. The trooper goes up and he says, "It's okay, buddy, it's okay." And then the trooper approached the dog, and he was in this large puddle of water that was covering his legs. It was like belly deep. And the trooper moved in on the dog, and the dog started to growl, and the trooper moved a little bit closer and said, "I don't blame you, it's okay, buddy," and was real soft-spoken. And the dog eventually got out of there and went with the trooper, and he responded, Ron DeSantis, on Twitter, and he said, "Hey," on X, he says, "It's cruel for anyone to leave a dog tied to a post in the middle of an oncoming storm. Florida will hold anyone accountable who mistreats pets." So yeah, it's heartbreaking to see someone treat an innocent animal like that. What's even the point? Were they hoping to find him alive? I would hope that they would find him alive after the storm was done. But it's good that Florida has someone like Ron DeSantis in charge. I like how Ron DeSantis said in that clip, throw the book at him. Yeah. Also in Florida, they're not allowing sexual predators, criminals, convicts into these hurricane shelters. They're not allowing them in there. They actually have to go to the county jail if they want to seek refuge from the storm. These convicted pedophiles, right, who are on the sex registry. So most important thing about this story is that the pup's okay, and he appears to be really happy. So like I said, in times of crisis, people's colors really start to come out. I was telling you about Kamala Harris and how she actually is trying to make this crisis not go to waste, and she's politicizing it. And you see people do that, but then you also see people like the state trooper. Okay, so story here has a bit of both sides. You have the people who leave the dog for dead, the psycho who did this, and I hope that they hold him accountable because just absolutely disgusting. But you also have the trooper who saw this and took action. Okay, so it's unclear if the person responsible for this, tying up the dog, intended to harm the dog, but really there is no excuse. Okay, there is no excuse for this. And that being said, I'm glad the little guy is safe and his nightmare is over. And hopefully we can find somebody to be held accountable for this. But good on Ron DeSantis. He goes, throw the book at him. Yeah, Ron, throw the book at him. All right, you guys have a blessed day. That's it for our live stream. I wanted to extend the live stream a little bit, give you guys a little bit more stories. We'll be back at it on Monday. I am going to drop another show, and it's 2 hours. I'm going to drop that show here at about 5 p.m. tonight. So you guys can watch that show because I didn't give you a show yesterday on the YouTube stream. So that show will be airing at about 5 o'clock tonight. So you can catch that here on YouTube. So go ahead and smash that like button and subscribe to the YouTube channel. You guys have a blessed day. Bye-bye.